As usual, we have Anne Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, it's great to be here. Good to see you.
Yep, and it's always a pleasure to talk with you about sensory health because it's something that affects every single one of us. I have got a comment from last week, which I love, and I love these. So I'll start with this one. I always love listening to Anne. She is a treasure.
Aw.
And
Aw. Sorry. I didn't know you were going to say that. That's not fair. Sorry,
I
carry
know.
on. Mm-hmm.
That was from Mary in Montana in the USA, who really enjoys these. So yeah, and I think that we get lots of these people who comment either directly or indirectly saying we just love these sessions. So thank you for being part of this. We love them.
Oh, it's just a delight to be able to just to come in to talk with you. And if people are happy with my ramblings and musings and thinkings and hopefully helpful comments or suggestions or teachings or exhortations, whatever, just to try and live. I just love living life and living life to the full, living life in abundance. And that's what we want. Abundant life in physical health, mental health, emotional health, sensory health. That's what, so I'm here to support and encourage. So thank you for the opportunity. I do love it.
Which I think is the point, though, about sensory health. I mean, that is a conversation in itself. It's about enjoying life. It's about living life, not just surviving, grinning and bearing it, getting through the difficult times, which we're all going to have. If you can improve your sensory health, then now you're not just surviving, you're thriving. And that's what we do these for.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I love. It's that thriving and flourishing. Our particular church has been talking at the moment about the flourishing, because I'm in the island of Jersey. It's flourishing for the island of Jersey, and to think that we can be part of helping people live a better life and to actually enjoy moments in the midst of stuff life is just hard. I think the older I get, the more I realize I really had quite a naive view of life growing up, which was lovely. But then the realities hit and it's like, nah, it really is tough for pretty much everybody. And if it's not tough for them now, there will be a season in which it's tough. And it's just like, really, does it have to be that way? And actually, yes, it does. Because that's the world that we live in. But we don't have to live under that. We can live above those circumstances. And the little things like, I think, as I said before, I love going to a sauna. That has just totally revolutionized my life. To be somewhere that is quiet, that is hot, that I can just rest. I don't think anybody else takes any earplugs to listen to anything. So everything, it's a really lovely sensory experience for me. And it is just that 15 minutes. The plunge pool, maybe not quite so relaxing afterwards, but to have that 15 minutes of that warmth and space and quiet is just one of those precious things that sets me up. And I so look forward to going there regularly during the week. So yeah, that is absolutely my little treat, to be able to cope with everything else, get my mind in the right place, get my body in the right place. Lovely time to meditate and just rest and think.
On that one, last week we had Dr. Richard Scott, GP, and he was looking at cold water plunges, ice therapy, hydrotherapy. It's got lots of names. Now, medically, unless you've got any sort of known heart issue, cold water plunges are really, really good for you. And it got me thinking about why. Now, we touched upon much more the medical side, what's happening to your hormones and the body and all that kind of stuff. But I got wondering, what are the sensory benefits and kind of what's going on? Now, here's a couple of facts from Richard. It's been around since the Romans did it in Egypt. So it's been around a long time, documented. There is a guy who's called the Iceman who has run a marathon in bare feet in the Arctic Circle, which is just, why? But actually, he says a cold water plunge doesn't need to be ice. Anything under 15 degrees qualifies for all the medicinal benefits, hormone release. But what's going on with the senses? Because it relaxes you, it reduces stress. The hormones, the feel good hormones. Is that the
endorphins?
Thank you. It releases those if you're in water less than 15 degrees for at least several minutes. What happens with the senses? We've looked at surfing, but what happens with the senses with cold water plunging that makes this actually quite a beneficial thing to reduce stress and anxiety?
Oh, that's a really interesting one, because I think the medical is different to a degree in the actual sensory, because with sensory, it's normally when you are doing it, it feels like fun. It should be a pleasurable experience. It's more the after effects of the plunge pool that are more pleasurable. I don't have any pleasure in the actual plunge itself, because boy, it's cold. So literally, like, our tactile receptors, you go, woo, they are totally set on fire. There's nothing much that happens in the vestibular system, because we're kind of like upright, unless people get their heads under the plunge pool. I don't know if you went into detail, but like, I'm not doing that. I will put cold water over my head, but I'm not going to plunge my head in and swim in there. So there's not much proprioception, which is a very calming. There's not much vestibular. There's no linear vestibular, which is also very calming. But what it does hit is the tactile system naturally, because the cold flooding your whole body, if you are top to toe, massive input of that, and that will be part of that calming mechanism, using the temperature pathways to reduce stress and arousal levels. But apart from that, I can't see. You can't see too much into it. And certainly that degree of cold for most people is not we wouldn't interpret that as pleasurable. The after effects, yes, but not the actual doing of it. So I probably, unless someone actually does it, see, it depends on their tactile processing, and it depends on their interoception as to how they would actually, how they would interpret that sensation. Because there are some people that we know with their touch systems that they can bump into a table and not realize it at all. That they can bump into furniture. They're really quite under-responsive in their touch system. That they get bruises and they have no idea how they're getting those bruises. They might go. It's funny. I was working with a lovely autistic lady. So this is if you're if you're a lady listening, for those who've had leg waxing, men, you've probably seen it on the on things, but it was amazing. This female autistic lady, she loved having waxing because it didn't hurt her. Her perception of pain was such that was such that she didn't interpret it as pain when she was getting this procedure done. So there are definitely upsides to not perceiving certain sensations in the same way as other people. So for her, it wasn't painful. And there are some people who might go into really cold water and it's not interpreted as in unpleasant, because they don't register cold in the same way that others do. So like some people they won't, or some parents certainly get worried when their children are out and they haven't got their coat on. And the parents are thinking they're going to catch their death of cold. But I'm thinking they don't interpret that as cold. Their brains are just not seeing that. Or, and heat, hot and cold, they are particularly difficult, I think, for some people to come to terms with, and how to manage those, because they look odd wearing coats in the summer, or not wearing coats when we think we ought to, or running around like you're a marathon man. I think I would be curious to assess his tactile processing in that, actually.
I hadn't thought about that, because we were talking about how could he do that, and Richard said some people are just made differently. But you've just kind of given the extension of that sentence, which is I wonder what's going on with how he's processing what he's feeling. Because, for example, Stephen, my oldest son, loves to run in the rain. Now, I don't like to run, period. But if it was raining, I would want to run even less, because why would I want to get wet and cold? But he loves that. I think, well, what's wrong with you? But actually, there's nothing wrong with him. It's what he enjoys, and it's okay.
It is. Oh, we're just so, each to their own.
No, absolutely. I was thinking, again, this is another point that came out of the chat with Richard, which I wanted to touch with you as well, because what reminded me was in Norway and Finland and a few other nations in that area, it's normal to leave a very tiny baby in a pram outside in the ice cold. While the mum would go in for a coffee. That's normal culture. Or they're having friends around, they put the baby outside to sleep in the cold. Now, to a British dad, that just seems like insanity. It's clearly not, because the babies are very healthy in Finland, Sweden, Norway. What could be going on for the baby that could be helpful and relaxing? Because they seem to be enjoying this.
I do think they will be well covered, though. I think that
Yes.
that is a difference. There is that there is the snug, there is the warmth within that. I think fresh air is generally a lot better for us than we realize, because it is good for our immune system just even to be in that. And if it's not, the reason why we think that cold is bad is probably because the British things that we do, that is going out in the rain, and we literally get a chill. And so we don't protect ourselves well, whereas going out in the cold, going out in the wet, covered and warm and not getting a chill, then it stimulates our immune systems, and we're much healthier with it. We're happy and we're fine. It's not bringing in, it's not, I don't know how the disease side of things works. I'd be really interested to go back actually and listen to your shows. And I'm very glad to know that you actually have catch-ups, don't you? Is that right?
Yeah,
catch-ups or replays or
all interviews, catch-up, YouTube and podcast.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So that's definitely one I want to go back and have a look at. But there is a difference between, I think, within themselves, their bodies are well, even though they are breathing in very, very cold. The rest of their bodies are snug. So I think it's just a freshness, really. But they themselves, it's not as if you are leaving them out, because they would catch hypothermia, and therefore, no chance, no good. Yeah.
They always look very, very well wrapped up, to be fair, and not just a baby outside. That's not what we're talking about here. So you were talking earlier about sensory in a theatre, how to have a good sensory experience, which I want to move on to. But what I was going to say is completely left my head. Let's go on to that and see if my brain can recall what I was about to say.
Yes, I had an amazing time. I was called in. I was asked to go in by our local arts centre, one of our places that produce theatres. They work with young people. They work with students. They help them explore life dramatically, as well as putting on productions. But they were looking at how to create sensory healthy performances. I think in the UK and other places they're being called relaxed performances. So I was saying, I'm not sure about the language there. But anyway, so I'm calling it sensory healthy performances, because in order to help people sit, that's a good hour to 2 hours, if not 3 hours, depending what the interval's like. Folks have to be in that environment, and it's how do we make it all inclusive for people to be able to engage and enjoy it. Again, sensory health, sensory integration is all about having fun. It's got to be a pleasurable experience. You don't come out of the theatre. You don't endure it and then come out of it thinking, oh, I'm glad I went there. You want to be able to enjoy the experience of it. And that's what you carry away when you leave the theatre. So we want the theatre experience to be as healthy and as enjoyable and as fun as possible, which means, on the one side, protecting the senses for those who are overreactive, and also giving enough space for those who need movement, who need more input, who need more, need more sensory input to feel good and to have enjoyed and got enough from the show. So we were talking about how it is quite a balance in order to do that, to meet lots of needs. But it really brought me back to the Sensory Healthy Church program that I'd already created, thinking, these are exactly the same kind of principles that our theatre world is looking at. And I thought, crumbs, that really, again, it goes right the way across the board. I hadn't thought of having sensory healthy theatres, or I just hadn't been taken there before, but I will be now, and I'll be putting more blogs out and information as to how to help theatre and dramatic companies as well, because you can imagine that, all the kind of, especially at panto time, it's all it's behind you, and all of the shouting, and they kind of it's a massively overloading, potentially, experience, which will be an absolute nightmare for some. So we're trying to work out how to tone things down, how to, there's lots in it. Sorry, far away. What else can I tell you about sensory healthy performances or?
So much. One of the things that comes to my mind, which I have never directly encountered or experienced, but that's fireworks without noises, indoor fireworks. When I first thought that, I did have health and safety assessments going off in my brain. How can you possibly have fireworks indoors? But these aren't explosive. These are more, I guess, light displays of something, or fireworks that have less noises, I suppose, in some contexts. But it's I suppose it's that sort of idea that I know we've mentioned before about there is a safe level of decibels. How loud can something be before it actually causes hearing damage, as a general rule? So there's a nice simple line in the sound. We know that at this point, this many decibels, we're going to have hearing loss after this time. So let's bring it down from there. We've also talked about how there might be a maximum safe limit, but actually there are personal preference limits, and they're not going to be the same. Some are going to be higher, some are going to be lower. So how do you start to do a pantomime that actually enables people who don't like the shouting? Did you come up with any conclusions with them?
Yeah, we kind of realize that it's more, if we can meet the needs of those who are more overreactive, others can enjoy it just as well. You don't have to bring the arousal levels up for everybody else to that degree for them to enjoy it. If it's a good show, they're going to enjoy it. We did discuss about possibly having a breakout room where there is a screen, a separate screen. But if we want people in together, let's just try it. And until people actually give feedback for what it's like, not having to shout, not having things shock you and surprise you, does that make it any less enjoyable for you? Because if it doesn't, if you're able to be satisfied and happy, then we don't need those in everyday experiences. We then may choose to have sensory, highly sensory, a multi-sensory show, and advertise that as an additional. Make your shows more accessible for everybody, rather than having it's catered for those who love the sights, the sounds, the smells, and all the impact and the booze and the spontaneity and the unsettledness and the uncertainty of it all. So that's typically what goes on. And then you have a small provision, or you might have a one-off for those who are more sensitive, and everything is pared down. I think cinemas are doing that as well. They cater for those who don't like extra sights, sounds, smells, and inputs. Everything's much calmer. But that only qualifies for one type of sensory person, which is great. And I'm very glad that that's there. But I would much rather see the general being able to accommodate a little bit more movement, a little bit less interaction, a little bit less of everything, with enabling people to move around a little bit, just a little bit more flexibility, giving them different things to sit on, different things to play with. But it's just more an average experience. And then you have the extra, let's really go for a full on, and you can have those as specials, and you can have a quieter one if you want as a special. But I'd much rather we catered for everybody, as many people as we can first, and then where we need to really specialize, then to do so.
I think that's the thing, though, isn't it? Again, because, and we've touched on this quite a few times, it's not just about stopping everything or making so many modifications to something that it then becomes impractical to actually do anything with that thing, because we want people to be together, we want people to live, we want them to be able to engage with one another in society, including the pantomime or whatever, even airports, which we were talking about a while back. But sometimes those simple things can make a difference. But again, if we had this particular theatre performance is going to be much more tailored if you've got any auditory processing issues, so that we're going to have the lights on, we're going to have no shouting, that it's going to be turned quieter. No one's going to care if your child can't sit still, or your young adult that you're bringing has, noises they make. This is okay. So it's and in a sense that is a sort of much larger breakout room. But actually, again, just because we've always done something a certain way doesn't mean to say we should carry on doing it that way just because that's what we've always done. Because actually there are much easier ways of engaging with a much wider audience by removing the things that aren't critical to the thing, like pantomime. I really hate pantomimes personally. I hate the booing, I hate all that stuff. I have no auditory issues. I know I just really dislike that. If I'm going to something like that, I just want to sit and be entertained. I don't want to be engaging in it. That's a personal thing to me. Others love it, and that's great. But I think there are easy things we can do, minor modifications, to engage even more people and make it even more successful.
Yeah, yeah. And so we were talking about how, like, the preparation, the practice, the expectations. If people do want to have something more spontaneous, if there is something more interactive, just let people know about it. There could be, you could give them an element of a script. I mean, that's the thing with theatres, unless it is unscripted, which is rare, you will actually have a script. So you can prepare. A lot of it, again, was just real preparation before you go. And I mean, these guys were just brilliant because they were even working, if they have some of their own people within their company. What typically happens, if I give you this example, so what typically happens is that you go through all the scripting, you go through the casting, you work out which position you're in, you do all of that, and you do most of that for about 90% of the time. You're all in your ordinary clothes, you're just on the stage, and it's only at the very last that you bring in the stage lights, you bring in the costumes, which of course, where if you've got tactile processing issues, that can be an issue if they're particularly scratchy, and that can be quite difficult for some of the actors. Sights, the sounds, the smells, and you only bring in the orchestra if you have the orchestra or sounds, whatever, really at the last minute. So they were getting the idea that, actually, if they are going to be doing performances and if they are wanting to encourage younger actors who may have neurodiversity, they may have nothing at all. They don't know any diagnosis that they may or may not have, but they are going to screen for their sensory health. They're going to screen their sensory processing issues so that they can perhaps introduce those extra lights, like five practices before they would normally have done. Try the costumes on just to check, give people time to accommodate and to adjust. So I was really heartened from the conversations, and they really got it because they have had experience of people coming in and actually just being pretty overwhelmed with how quickly in those last few practices things change, and the sensory experiences ramp up hugely.
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought, not I wouldn't think about the actors, but I wouldn't have thought about them going from normal clothes to performance. I just thought they were in their performance clothes much earlier. I didn't realize it was quite that sort of switch.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I spent a lot of time as well on stage when I was younger, and so it was lovely to be able to share with them all the stuff I used to do in the opera house and a couple of albums that I recorded. So I know the stage world and I know the recording world. So it was lovely to be able to speak and understand and think, crumbs, that was 30 years ago almost. But nice, yeah, just really lovely to reconnect with them.
It's no different what you're saying about preparing people to something that I've always said in churches, especially when I was involved in children's ministry. If we've got people coming to a church service, and the Anglican church would be your classic, most people's experience of church, if they don't do church normally, probably an Anglican church, Church of England. And they have a book and they work through the book and you jump from page to page. And unless you know what page you're supposed to go to, you're standing there with this book looking like an idiot thinking, well, I've just read down this. What's going on here? Because actually there's no guidance of, we're on page 7, now let's go to page 54. We expect people to know that. And now we're back at page 7 again. But I've just come from there. Could you not give me some warning? And it's these things that actually I think churches have started to do better, of actually guiding people. Okay, we're now going to go to page 53, halfway down. Let's carry on from here. It doesn't interrupt the flow of the service. It doesn't stop what's going on. It doesn't preclude anything. It just enables more people to engage by doing something really, really simple that most of the people who are already there probably are glad for as well, even if they've done it 100 times.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I mean, I'm in a church at the moment where we have no liturgy, that there's very little written down. It's much more spontaneous, and there is a lot to be said for the liturgy for some of our people in particular, to have that written down if they know where they're going. I'm right behind you there with the page numbers, goodness me. But if it's brilliant, it is clear, it is written down, you see it visually, you hear it auditory, it's set, you follow it through. It's generally a calmer environment as well, and there is definitely more space for people just to be. So it's a perfect sensory fit for some of our individuals. Yeah.
I remembered what I wanted to say, and we'll finish on this one. Preparation. You were talking about the difference with the British, that if you go out in this weather, you're going to catch a chill, because we don't think it's going to be cold. I know we're British, and most of the time it's fairly cool, but we don't tend to think, right, it's a cold day. I need to prepare for the fact it's probably going to rain. So when I went to Guernsey for 2 weeks, everybody walks around with a set of raincoats and an umbrella. As a British man, I'm thinking, well, yes, I know about the umbrella thing, but what are the waterproofs for? And they're prepared for sudden onset rain. So you're walking down the street, it rains, yeah, whatever, stick a raincoat on. Everybody else who's local is putting on full waterproofs. And this should be a clue to this. Probably what I'm wearing is not enough. And you finish drenched. 5 minutes later, it stops raining. They take off the waterproofs. Off they go. So preparation. How do we help ourselves do better, especially British? Because we just get on with it, don't we? It's the British spirit. It's not necessarily a healthy British spirit, but that's how we do it. So how do we do better at preparing ourselves for sensory experiences, especially like the theatre? What can we do? You've talked about the theatre, but what can we do as individuals? We're going out to cinema, we're going out for a restaurant. What can we do really quickly, simply to help us prepare for what could happen rather than doing it and being shocked, surprised and upset?
Yeah, have a little bag. I think a little sensory bag to take around, maybe not so little actually, but a bit of everything, whatever you need, whatever your individual needs. It's just like, us ladies, we're quite used to our handbags, but generally are pretty small. Well, mine is anyway. But if I was going out, and if it's like having you carry your baby bag with you. You just have a sensory bag, and that's what you do. That is what goes around with you and your family, or just you yourself. So it's full of proprioceptive things. It's things to chew on. It's things to, if you're overreactive in any capacity, you make sure you've got an extra layer. You've got your hat on so that you're not concerned about, folks touching you unexpectedly. You've got your layers, or a bag. Honestly, a bag is what I've just suddenly thought I should have some. I should have a bag with Santé written on it, and literally that's what people can use as their sensory bag. Yes, thank you. I shall credit you when that comes on. I shall refer back and says, "Hey, Pure 24/7 Radio, do you remember this?" A bag with Santé in it, so for folks to know that you have a dedicated sensory bag and stuff stays in there, so that you don't always have to think about what to bring. I would always have a visual timetable before to make it very specific to the place you are going to help with that. But if you have a bag of sensory experiences, we sometimes call them sensory toys, just things to chew, to pull, to push, to sit on, to look at, to hear, to listen to smell, whatever your individual needs, Philip.
We need a Mary Poppins bag. Mary Poppins was the original occupational therapist because she turns up with a big bag and she could satisfy every requirement of everybody out of that big bag. Perhaps we don't need a big skip behind us, but a carpet bag, a small bag, it works. But yes, we all need that Mary Poppins approach of being ready before you arrive for whatever may happen.
And she also had an umbrella with her.
Yes, she did. And a hat stand. Anyway, thank you, Anne. Yeah, I love these. I love the fact we've talked about car design and noises in engines and truck design. Leg waxing today got covered as well. I love the variety of what we talk about. Thank you so much. Where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
That's great. Thank you. Yes. So www.annelaurejackson.com. And in future, we will have somewhere directly towards Pure 24/7 Radio.
Yes.
As well. And there's more information on there that we can talk about at another time. But yeah, no, great. So AnneLaureJackson.com or at Sensory Health Coach on most of other social media.
Fantastic. As ever, thank you. If you've got any questions to ask Anne about why you don't like leg waxing or whatever may come up for your sensory health needs from going to the theatre, cinema or whatever, email us here at the studio, hello@pure247radio.org, hello@pure247radio.org, and I will ask them to Anne on your behalf. Anne, thank you. Have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Pure 24/7 Radio is listener supported, which means we are free, online and always pure because of the generous support of our listeners. If you would like to contribute financially, please visit pure247radio.org. If you'd like to find out how we use your money, please visit the Our Cost section. Any donation of any size will help keep us on air and broadcasting for free. Thank you.